Welcome to STEAM Forward Academy. My name is Dr. Janita Pritchett, and I'm the founder of STEAM Forward Academy. Our mission is to inspire youth to pursue science, technology, engineering, art, and math with confidence, curiosity, enthusiasm, and a genuine sense of belonging. Our instructors have over 40 years of experience, and they've coupled their passion and their excitement for educating their youth and mentoring to create a fun-filled program just for you. We've partnered with First Star National STEAM Academy to create an exciting curriculum that you can do right from the comfort of your own home. With that, I'll be actually leading your activity today, and we're going to learn all about NFTs and how we can use art to create digital things that we can sell online. With that, let's get started. So, if you've been paying attention to social media or any of the technology news, maybe you've heard about something called an NFT. They're actually taking the world by storm. Well, what is an NFT? NFT stands for non-fungible token, and it's a way to actually add ownership to a product that you may have. Whether that be a digital piece of art, music, or a video game, it's a way to create a unique identifier that can be used to actually verify who authenticated or created something, and then also be used as a transactionary piece to sell it to someone else. Now, for artists, this creates a whole new world or opportunity to take advantage of. So now you may be thinking, well, how does it work? Well, NFTs rely on blockchain technology. And if you've ever heard of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum, you've probably heard of blockchain before. Blockchain includes a series of different coding or words or programming that's used to help identify something with a particular value. And then they're attached to each other to form an actual chain. And so when we want to create NFTs, we simply actually attach a digital certificate to a piece of artwork or some music or a video game, and then we can use that to exchange on an open market. Now, I said the word non-fungible. So you're probably asking, well, what does fungible mean? Fungible means it's exchangeable. So take, for instance, like a $100 bill. I could take $100 and exchange that for somebody for 5 $20 bills. And they're exactly equivalent. They're equal to one another. So I can interchange the two. When something is non-fungible, the interchanging cannot happen. So if we have a piece of artwork that we're considering non-fungible, even if we make copies of it, the original piece still retains its ownership and its value. And that's the beauty behind NFTs. Now, one of the ways that people create NFTs is by creating some digital artwork. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. You could take actual art that you've created and digitize it by scanning it in and making it into a digital picture. Or you could actually use coding to create a digital piece of artwork. So during today's activity, we're going to learn how to use code to create artwork that potentially could go onto a platform to sell through an NFT mechanism. Now, what we're going to use is a platform called hourofcode.com. Hourofcode.com is a free platform that allows you to learn about coding and actually create a ton of different things, from video games to what we'll do today, artwork. So grab your mobile device or a phone or a laptop and head to hourofcode.com so we can get started. So once you've had a chance to go over to hourofcode.com, we're going to go into the activities and actually search for the activity that we're going to be doing today. So in that search bar, go ahead and type in art, and we're going to scroll down, and you can see there are a ton of different options that we can pick, but we're going to go with that one that just says artist and has the really cool psychedelic image. Now, once we get in there, we have our ability to access our workspace. And remember, the workspace is where we will be doing our coding. Now, the type of coding that we are doing is block coding, which is different than your traditional text-based coding. In this type of coding, we use a series of blocks that have coding associated with them, have a specific language written behind them, and we put those in order to create the steps or actions that we want to see. And so for this first example, we're going to actually just start off by drawing a square. And it gives us some instructions that we can follow. And you can see each of the different blocks have different motions associated with them. You can see forward. And then you could also click on that toggle button if you wanted to change it to go backwards. And then you can see the length of the line that we'll be drawing with that 100 pixels. And if we want to make any turns, we can change the degree that we're doing as such. Now, because we're drawing a square, we're going to have to do a series of different blocks to actually execute all the actions that we need. So you can see each time I'm just kind of mapping out what would be needed for that next step. And so my first motion would be to move forward by 100 pixels, and then we're going to make a right turn at 90 degrees, then move forward again, make another right turn, then move forward again, then make another right turn, and then finally make a forward motion, and that should help us to actually get our square. Once we're done, we're going to go ahead and click run, and you can see that we are able to execute that code. So that's awesome. So try that on your own, and when you're ready, you can go ahead and click continue onto that next puzzle. Now the second one, we're still going to be drawing a simple shape using coding, but now we're going to be using a diamond. And so diamond, we know, has some different angles compared to our square. We're going to be using angles of 120 degrees and 60 degrees. And the length of the sides that we're going to be drawing will be 150 pixels. So again, map out what you want to do, the directions that we're going to need to be able to move. And as you want to change those angles, you can just hit that toggle, that drop down button to be able to find the appropriate angle that you want. So again, in this diamond, we are going to have angles of 120 and 160. And you can see that as you change the angle that you're selecting, that angle that's within that diagram will adjust as well. And if you make a mistake, no worries. You can always come back and do it again. Now, important on this puzzle, make sure that you are updating the pixel number. We need it to be 150 pixels, so make sure you type that in. And then make your adjustments accordingly. Again, remember, coding is basically the language that we're using to talk to computers, to tell it to do specific actions. And so each one of these blocks is telling our icon, our sprite, to do something based off of the commands that are there. And similar to our square, you're going to have to build out a chain of different commands to be able to complete the task at hand. And once you're ready, go ahead and click run. Oh no! So you can see in this case, I drew my diamond, but it's opposite the way it was supposed to go. So no worries, we just put on our thinking hats and see what troubleshooting must we do. And so in this case, it looks like the first direction did not necessarily go the way that we wanted it to. The forward direction was not going upwards. It instead went down. So I'm going to have to go back into my workspace and make those adjustments accordingly. So you can hit that reset button if you too need to reset, and go ahead and make those adjustments. And so you have the option of changing the turning direction. And so that should help out. And we can see how if we change our turns, if that will then indeed give us the shape that we're looking for. All right, we're getting closer. So it looks like that first direction, that first line that was drawn was perfect, but then the angle of my turn was off. So not only do I need to adjust that turn direction, but also those angles. So where I have my 60 written, likely need to change that to 120. And where I have 120, I have to change that to the 60 to be reflective of the true angle that we're doing. And after you make those adjustments, we will be able to hit reset again and test out the code that we've created. And voila, it looks like I completed the task. And of course, if you want to keep practicing on those, you can hit replay, or when you're ready, go ahead and hit that continue button to go on to the next puzzle. All right, so the third puzzle now, we are doing this 6-sided shape, a hexagon that we're going to be doing. So we want to draw a hexagon with 100 pixel sides and 60-degree turns. And so again, they're not telling us how many iterations, how many times do we have to do these patterns. That's part of our job as the programmer to figure that out. So again, we're adjusting those angles, making sure that we're putting our forward motion command in there, as well as our turning command, and adjusting the angle accordingly. Because there are 6 sides here, we know that we're going to have this pattern repeated a number of times in order to create our desired shape. And so you can see, you can be just like what I'm doing, where I am tracing out each of the lines, making sure I have a command that accounts for the action that I would like to see happen. So we're getting there. And once we think we have everything accounted for, we can hit run to verify that our code command is appropriate. So I realized I was missing a turn to complete this action, so add that in. That's the beauty of block coding. It's pretty easy to troubleshoot coding when you're doing block coding. When you're doing text-based coding, you do have to make sure that you're inputting the words in correctly, using the proper punctuation to get our jobs done. But that seemed to work, and we're off to puzzle number 4. All right, so on this one, we now are going to get ready to, again, draw a hexagon, but instead, we are now going to be using this function that allows us to repeat a set of commands. Remember, in the last one, I had to actually put 6 forwards, 6 turns to account for all of those different actions, but now we have this additional block that we can use to help us actually have a repeat of what we need. So you can see if I just put that forward command and that right command, it only happens one time. But by using that pink block function, that should allow us to repeat. All right, so now, it didn't seem to give me 6 repeats. So perhaps the way I have it set up is incorrect. Right now I have the block codes on the end of the repeat function. So maybe if I put it before, maybe that will activate that repeating motion. And it still doesn't seem like it's doing it. All right, and so let's go back to the drawing board. If we read a little bit more in our instructions, we can see that we can actually potentially move those blocks inside of our pink block to hopefully create that repeating sequence that we need. And so, boom. I would not have even guessed that. I guess reading is fundamental. That helps us out a lot. So now by placing that sequence inside of that repeat function, it can now actually repeat the action 6 times without me having to build out 6 separate commands for it. All right, we're moving right along. On to the next one. Ooh, this is nice. Nice little flower art that we can create using some coding. And so in this particular one, they've given us the command that's needed to draw one of the petals. And so we have to now figure out, if we want to just have this be a repeat-based function, how many times will this sequence have to go? So if we count up each of the petals, we can see the total number that we need in order to do this. Looks to me that there are 12 different petals. So if we put 12 in that repeat command, that hopefully will allow us to create the series that we need to execute this function. And so now all we got to do is move that entire block into that function piece, that repeat function piece, the pink one, and then we attach it to our run button. And we hit run, and it's going. That's so cool to see the artwork being created just by using some digital commands. So as we're learning these different steps, start thinking about what your design might look like and how you would use programming to create your art. Okay, so taking it up another notch. This time it looks like we are not only going to be repeating the functions multiple times, but we're also incorporating some color into our artwork. And so we have those commands that allows us to pick different colors. There's that random color picker. And we still have to ultimately figure out how many times do we need to do this. Looks like we have the same number of petals this time around. So once we know that, we can adjust the number accordingly to be able to create our flower. It's always good to just run it once based off of what you see to see what you get. And you can see indeed that only completed one petal for us. So in order to create the entire flower, we would need to use that repeat function once again. So remember, that is that pink block where we have to input how many times we want that series of commands to run. Once you've entered that number, drag it over to your workspace, insert the commands, and then attach it to your run block. And let's see what we're able to generate here. Hit that reset button. And let it go. So it's repeating, but it seems like it's just repeating on the same petal versus it actually jumping around to different petals. So we got to make some changes to our series here. And so what we saw was that it just kept jumping and repeating, going over that same diamond, that same petal. So what we're going to have to do is build in a turn somewhere so that the direction can shift. So we can type in a different number there that we want to try, and we'll add that to our series of commands in order to create, hopefully, a complete flower. So now we're just trying to add that into our commands, thinking about where the most appropriate place might be, adding it outside of that repeat function, that first repeat function, to see if that will work. All right, so it looks like it's a going. So that extra turn step was needed so that the direction of our sprite, our little icon, would change to be able to fully build out that flower. And we're good. And so now we are heading on to that 7th puzzle. This one has a very unique looking shape. It's a hexagon with multiple hexagons inside of it. And so we have our initial command that's provided for us. Our job is to figure out how do we need to alter this coding sequence to create the digital artwork that we want to have displayed. Again, you got to think about what degrees do we need to be using, how many turns will we need to create the pattern that we want. Essentially, the big hexagon that's there is really being made by making several smaller hexagons to create that kind of overlapping pattern. And if you need to, throughout this recording, press pause if you need to read more of the steps in depth or if you want to try something different. But let's just see what that series does for us. And so you see the series that's listed gave us our initial hexagon with multiple colors, but we now need to build in some repeats. So how are we going to get it to actually create the pattern that we want? The good thing I like about this platform is that if you get stumped along the way, there is that see a solution button that's down there for you. So definitely tap into that if needed, but you guys got it. Keep being curious, keep trying out different things and see what you can come up with. So once you come up with a game plan, you can head back over to your workspace and start trying to add different sequences, parts to your sequence to try to adjust what's going on. Don't forget when you're building in any of those turns to adjust the angle as needed. And if you make a mistake, you can always drag a block off of your workspace and try again. So just to see what happens there, so you can see by adding that turn, okay, that put me in the right direction, but now I need to actually repeat everything multiple times to complete the entire diagram. So I'm just adding that repeat block on the outside, and then going to be typing in the information that we want to see how many times do we have to do it. It looks like there is about 6 hexagons in the hexagon. So we're going to put the number 6 there. And then let's run it and see what we come up with. Oh yeah. Oh, that's so cool. It's also pretty cool that it looks pretty 3D, even though we're making this kind of 2D flat structure. All right, we're gonna get a little bit more challenging. Now we are making multiple flowers, but we also are creating flowers that are not connected to one another. So everything that we've done up until now, the repeated actions were all connected to one another to form one big image. Whereas now we have 3 different things that we're going to be representing in this artwork that we're creating. And so we're going to have to figure out how to get our sprite, our icon, to actually jump from one flower to the next so it can create that design as well. And so you can see we do have a number of different information provided for us. We have this function that's created that's going to show us how to draw one of the flowers, but we're going to have to make sure we build in the jump aspect to get it to create the next one, go from one space to the next, and then be in position to create the next flower. So just reading over the code here to see what is present and thinking about how this shape might show up. And then coming up with a game plan. Again, feel free to pause if you need to as you are working on yours so that you have ample time to try out coming up with an option. And so let's see, if we run this as is, it's so cool to watch them draw it. That allowed us to make one single one. But now we have to build in that jump. We have to build in a command that's telling the sprite, the icon, to move from one to another. And so the cool thing is by taking a series of code to represent a particular function, in this case, draw a flower, we can then insert that draw a flower command in lieu of, instead of putting all those other parts of the sequence in, because that draw flower now means anytime you see that to the computer, execute all those other steps. And now we can build in the jump command to go from one flower to the next and hopefully create these really cool patterns. And so we are seeing here what will happen in this case if we have this jump command input to create, and you can see it did allow it to go from one flower to the next and create this really cool artwork. Now, once you're done, go ahead and hit continue and head over to the next plan. Now, this looks a little intimidating. There's a lot of stuff on here, but no worries, we got this. And so you can see here, there are several functions that have been created, or several series or sequences that have been created, and we can then manipulate them if we want to create different shapes like triangles or squares or octagons. As is, this should be built so that we can see a couple of different shapes, and then when we go in and tweak the code, we can create a new shape. So there's a lot of different steps in here. You can see that there's a function that tells us how to draw a particular shape, and we're doing it 6 times. And then on top of that, we're going to repeat that multiple times. We're jumping from one area to the next. So a lot of things are happening in this particular sequence. And so the cool thing with coding is that you really are in charge of what comes out based off of the commands that you input. And block coding is a great way to introduce yourself to coding and make you feel more comfortable as you get ready to try your hand at more difficult types of coding like text-based coding. So if we look here, we can read over what's happening, and if we hit that start button or our run button, you can see that this is actually designing a series of hexagons. Almost kind of looks like a honeycomb of hexagons. And so we can try playing around with parts of the command to see how we can change the actual shape. So if this command as is gives us hexagons, could we change certain aspects to create squares or triangles or octagons? So give it a try. Try changing some parts of your code and see what you're able to come up with. So as we're drawing different shapes, I'm going to actually go into that function, that draw a shape function, and change some of the parameters there in order to create my square initially. So I know for a square, we would need to do whatever command 4 times to make that shape. I'm also going to have to change those angles so that we're actually creating right angles as opposed to those the hexagon angles that we saw. And so you can see that did allow me to make a nice pattern of squares relatively easily. And if you wanted to make a different pattern, you would just keep changing the input values that are in that function. So now for a triangle, we would have to do the command 3 times and change that angle accordingly. You can also change the pixel length if you want to try changing how big or small the drawing is. And of course, don't forget to change those angles for the shape that you are attempting to make. So we're building a little bit of math into our coding process because we got to be aware of the different angles that exist in some of these shapes that we are creating. Once again, after you are happy with your code, you can feel free to test it and see what you get. And so that's interesting. I didn't quite get a triangle, but I did get a pretty cool shape. I kind of like it. So something must be off with my angles. So yep, I do need to go ahead and change that out and see what results. Aha, that did indeed give me my triangles that I desired. You can also then, once you're happy with creating those different shapes, you can go into the upper commands and see what happens if you change certain things there. Because our next puzzle, our next and last puzzle, you guys are going to be creating your own artwork. So you'll have the opportunity to build whatever commands you want to create different artwork that you would be able to display. Once you're happy with the changes that you've made, you can hit that run button once again and give it a try. And once you're done, you could either hit start over if you want, or you can go back and hit that finish button, and that'll take you to our next puzzle. Or you can keep on trying out different options and seeing what you come up with. And I can see here something's off in my code because it's staying in that one little corner. But again, this could be some abstract art that you create as you continue to go through your design process. A lot of kind of endless opportunities here that you have to create art, because you are in control of the coding that's being used to create that artwork. So again, once you are done playing around with your options, feel free, you can advance on to that next part, or you can keep on playing. As I said, that last puzzle, you'll get an opportunity to create your very own set of artwork that you can potentially display elsewhere. So you can see you can come up with all kinds of patterns here and really let creativity drive you along. You can see I'm having a little bit too much fun here, just coming up with different patterns. So highly recommend you guys spend some time playing around with it and then heading on to that final puzzle. So once you're happy, you could either keep that one, or you can continue on to that last step, that last puzzle, which will be the one that you completely come up with on your own. And so here you can see we've made it to the end. Now it's up to you to just come up with whatever picture you want. You do see that you have access to a few extra commands there. There are stickers that you can add into your work. There are patterns that you can use so you can change how the lines look. And so you can build out what you want your function to look like. And you can see mine here. I went a little crazy, but you all have fun with it and come up with what you guys like. And would love to see your overall artwork. I played around with this for some time. I didn't go through all the nitty gritty with you all, but you can see that you're able to come up with some really cool designs. And I'm pretty happy with this one that I came up with. So would love to see what you all come up with. There is an option if you click finish where you'll see your design come up and you can say to send it to your phone. So you can actually have a copy of this as well. and you would be able to like screenshot it and upload or share it on a platform. Once you're done with this, definitely make sure that you create your certificate of completion, and then you can explore different NFT platforms that you might possibly want to showcase your artwork. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Wow, I love the artwork that I created. It's super cool. I would love to see what you all created with your coding. Now, if we wanted to actually create an NFT, we would have to go onto an open marketplace and actually put behind it the certificate that's needed to make it that unique identifier that then we could then exchange on that open market. So while we won't go into all those details today, hopefully you can do some exploring and continue your learning to get your artwork onto a site.